Hi guys, I'm here with investigative journalist Laura Loomer. She has been so kind enough to join me. Yesterday, she protested her life ban from Twitter by chaining herself to the door of Twitter. She was outside, she brought signs, there were protesters, the police came. She was then cut from the Twitter door, she was taken to the police precinct, and here she is with us today. And amazingly enough, even from protesting Twitter, she managed to trend #1 on Twitter. So I think that Twitter was Loomered because Laura Loomer trended #1 on Twitter without even being on Twitter. So I just wanted to invite you here today to congratulate you on that, because that's honestly amazing.
Thank you so much.
An investigative journalist who is not with an organization, you're just out there reporting and trying to get your thoughts out there. So did yesterday turn out kind of how you had planned? Like, what did you think was going to happen from your showing up there and chaining yourself to the door?
Yeah, so I had planned this for a few days now, and obviously because I brought signs with me, and I wanted to make the point about this egregious double standard that exists, this bias that exists at Twitter. Mm-hmm. But overall, I mean, I was not expecting as many people to show up as they did, and I didn't think that the stream would go as viral as it did, and it turned out great, probably better than I really had ever hoped for, because I ended up trending, like you said, #1 on Twitter. So it's kind of funny when you think about it, how I'm banned from Twitter for life, and then my in real life protest of Twitter is being tweeted about at Twitter headquarters.
Yeah, it's
and
like
then
Inception.
I'm trending #1.
Yeah.
It's kind of like mimetic warfare.
Totally. And I know, Facebook, like other places, people were seeing like what you were doing too. So I'm sure that was even more viewers.
Yeah.
But I also heard that you are suing Twitter. And so can you tell me a little about that? Like, how is that going for you?
Yeah, so I am going to be suing Twitter. I'm part of a class action lawsuit right now. And it's a class action lawsuit actually directed towards Facebook, Twitter, Google, Apple, and Instagram. And it's highlighting the antitrust issue here and the violation of the Sherman antitrust laws, various clauses of the antitrust laws, because these companies, these big tech social media companies, have essentially become monopolies, right? And if you were watching the social media hearing when Jack Dorsey and Mark Zuckerberg and Sheryl Sandberg were called to testify in September of this year, and they were asked whether or not they have algorithms that express bias against conservatives, or whether or not they are censoring content based off of political ideology, right? Mm-hmm. They said, no, we don't do that. We're a platform.
Right, and he said that under oath.
He said it under oath. They said that they're a platform, they're an open platform, and Jack Dorsey himself said that he views Twitter as being the digital square, right? The digital talking square. But what we're seeing now is that there clearly is a bias. And it's not only inherently visible if you're a Twitter user and if you're a conservative, or if you've been shadow banned or censored or just permanently banned like I have, but they were caught on camera, right? There was a Project Veritas expose that exposed Twitter engineers and Twitter employees talking about how they target conservatives and they shadow ban them.
Were you surprised when you saw that video released and they said your name? I've seen the video. I don't know if everyone has seen it, but it's a behind the scenes video where they mention Laura Loomer as that girl on Twitter. And so were you surprised to hear your name like that?
I was a little surprised, but I'm not really that shocked about it, because I was unverified by Twitter. So prior to being banned permanently, Twitter actually took away my verification about a year ago.
So did you used to be verified?
So I used to be verified, and then they took away my verification because I made some comments about Islamic Uber drivers after an ISIS attack took place here in New York City, where an Uber driver was an ISIS terrorist and he killed 8 people. And he wasn't even he didn't have a legitimate license to even drive, but he was driving for Uber.
How is that related to verification? Because what does the verification depend on? Does it depend on whether you're famous? Does it depend on the followers or your viewpoints?
Right, so that's the thing. So Twitter verification, for those who are kind of unaware of what Twitter verification is for, is if you're a public figure, or if you're a journalist or a media figure or a celebrity, you could apply to have your account verified. And the verification is the little blue mark with the white check inside. And I had one of those, of course, because about 18 months or so after I left Project Veritas and began doing my own independent journalism, I was a public figure. My stories were going very viral, and I had 45,000, 50,000 followers at the time, and then Twitter verified me. But then Twitter decided to become political, and they started to take away the verification from people who they deemed to be white supremacists or Nazis or bigots. And in November, I had my verification taken away. This is November of last year, of course. So it kind of begs the question, right? Are they trying to just strip away your identity or what? Because it's supposed to also protect public figures from having fake accounts, right? That
like
try
now
to
there are a
impersonate
bunch of
them so
fake
people know who they
Laura
are.
Loomer
So now there's a
accounts.
lot of fake Laura Loomer accounts now that I've been banned, and people are trying to scam others into giving them donations, and because they know that my supporters, would contribute to me and they want me back on social media. And so it's just been kind of a disaster since I was banned, because there's all these scam artists and people just trying to create fake accounts, and that's the problem. It causes a lot of issues, especially when you have someone in Silicon Valley or in New York City deciding, well, I'm just going to take away your verification. I'm going to take away your identification, essentially, because it was an identifier.
Right. Well, I guess I want to ask you a little bit about maybe some responses on Twitter. I know that I was posting a lot about this and seeing a lot of people's responses yesterday. Obviously, you're not on Twitter, so you can't see what they're saying. But I just wanted to bring up some of the criticisms people had of your protest, just so you can have a chance to respond. And that way I can post this on Twitter, and people on Twitter can see your response, because right now they have no way to even know what your response is, because you're also banned on Facebook.
Yeah.
So I think it's only fair that people hear your side as well. So I'll start with one thing I saw people sometimes writing, which is that they think Twitter has a right to choose who they want on their platform. They can decide their terms of service. They can decide who they want to take off their platform. And some people think that that's their right. I mean, we kind of touched on this a little bit with them mentioning that they're they want to be like the public square of digital social media.
I just have a question.
If
Twitter is a private company and they get to pick and choose according to their own terms of service who's on their platform, well, who is doing the picking and choosing? And it goes back to my argument and what I said in my original statement, and something that I've been documenting for a while now, is this Sharia influence in Silicon Valley. Why is it that conservatives are taken off the platform? Why is it that a conservative Jewish journalist like myself is taken off of Twitter or Facebook permanently, right? But then Hamas, the Muslim Brotherhood, those are designated terrorist organizations. People like Linda Sarsour, Siraj Wahhaj, who is a co-conspirator in the 1993 World Trade Center bombing, Louis Farrakhan, who is essentially calling for Jews to be exterminated by, referring to them as termites. What does that tell you about Twitter if that's who they're choosing to keep on their platform while kicking people off simply because they are
it totally makes
Trump
them look
supporters?
bad. So, do you think the government should get involved? Because what do you think the rights are that Twitter has here, as far as saying, okay, maybe Twitter is racist, maybe Twitter is prejudiced against people, but do you think that they have the right to do that?
No, because right now, these social media companies, whether it's Google, Twitter, Facebook, they're immune, right? They think that they're immune at the moment from lawsuits based on the content on their own platform. And this is something that Ted Cruz was talking about with Jack Dorsey during the hearings, right? And Mark Zuckerberg as well. And right now, Twitter and Facebook, they're operating as platforms, right? And as a platform, they're protected with this immunity, right? However, once you start picking and choosing based off an inherent political bias or discrimination, who is on the platform and who isn't, you're no longer a open platform, right? You're a
more
publisher.
like a publisher.
You're a publisher. And so I think that these companies should then have their immunity rights revoked from them so that they aren't protected. I think that if they are then classified as publishers, people would be able to sue them, and people would be able to file cases against them, and then they would probably be more cautious as to who they are censoring and what they're doing. Right. Because I mean, I don't think that anybody in this country who has seen the Project Veritas expose or has used Twitter themselves can honestly say that there isn't a bias against conservatives.
Got it. What do you say to your critics on Twitter? Because I've seen some of this. People who say that you don't have a right to free speech on Twitter. Like, what about hate speech? What about, what would you say to them?
Well, here's the thing. It goes, again, on this topic of the double standard. The liberals will say to the conservatives who are complaining about this, oh, you don't have free speech, right? You don't get free speech on Twitter. It's a private company. They can do whatever they want. But then there's this case, and I'll pull it up and we can discuss it. And just, this is another example of all the hypocrisy. This was a decision made on May 23rd of 2018. And a federal judge in New York City actually ruled that Trump can't block Twitter followers because then it's a violation of those followers' First Amendment rights, their constitutional rights, because, the president tweets so many times a day, or that's how they get their news. So if this is what a federal judge is ruling on the grounds of liberals who are suing Trump because they've been blocked by Trump, well, then how come we can't have the same ruling when it comes to these social media companies blocking and banning and censoring conservatives? It just seems only fair, right?
Right. And your press. So what about freedom of the press?
Exactly.
If Trump can't ban this journalist, then why are you banned from seeing Trump's tweets? Because you're banned from the platform.
The social media platform, Buchwald said, is a designated public forum from which Trump cannot exclude individual plaintiffs. She rejected an argument by the Justice Department that the president had a right to block Twitter followers because of his associational freedoms. So let's just change the language. Wherever you see, whoever who's arguing this, these are obviously liberals, right? And they're arguing this case against President Trump. Well, if you were to just replace Trump with Jack Dorsey or Mark Zuckerberg and the liberals with conservatives, I don't understand why it wouldn't then be true for conservatives. It seems like an egregious double standard.
Right. And even just based on this, like if Trump is the news, if journalists have a right to see his tweets, like this person, then why can't you as a journalist see his tweets? Why can't you have that option too?
Right. And they said that it's a public forum. So I think we need the government to get involved because it seems like different judges, they're starting to behave as activist judges. And if there's a lot of these rulings, or if individuals are filing lawsuits and their cases are being dismissed, or lawyers are saying, oh, you're never going to get anywhere because it's a private company, well, how is that true then when a federal judge is ruling that Trump can't block people because it's a public square?
Right.
I just feel like there needs to be some type of federal discussion or federal, and I hate to use the word regulation as a conservative, but if you have federal judges already ruling on this, well, then how does that apply to everybody else, right?
Right. And one thing I want to ask you as well is, do you think that Twitter took you down for being conservative or because of their anti-Semitism? Because, I mean, obviously we have protected classes and the government gets involved in that way. So, like, what do you think Twitter's reason was for taking you down? Because your tweet was explicitly about Islam, and you're a Jewish journalist, so what do you think it was?
Well, I think that they take me down because I'm effective, right? Because my video investigations have been extremely effective in exposing a lot of these high-profile jihadi and left-wing, figures who are leading the resistance movement. And my tweet was not a violation of the Twitter terms of service. Everything in my tweet is 100% factual, right? There's nothing in there that is derogatory, nothing malicious, nothing hateful, none of that whatsoever. I just truly believe that Silicon Valley is trying to create an echo chamber, and they're using their power and their immunity and their monopolistic rule over the internet to commit acts of political warfare against conservatives.
I'm actually wondering, do you think you can read the tweet? I have it because I love for people to just hear it who might not have heard it, I think this is your tweet that got you banned for life, which another thing is crazy to me is tweets can be flagged, tweets can be reported or taken down, but why would someone be banned for life? I don't understand that. But anyways, I want people to hear what your tweet was.
Isn't it ironic how the Twitter moment used to celebrate women, LGBTQ, and minorities is a picture of Ilhan Omar? Ilhan is pro-Sharia. Ilhan is pro-FGM, which stands for female genital mutilation. Under Sharia, homosexuals are oppressed and killed. Women are abused and forced to wear the hijab. Ilhan is anti-Jewish. Well, all of that is true. I wasn't saying anything. I didn't even use the word Islam. I didn't even use the word Muslim. In fact, it was a tweet that was advocating for human rights protections for people who are vulnerable, gay people, women, Jews, all of whom are persecuted under Sharia law. So, I don't see how that is hate speech. And that's why when I showed up to Twitter, I brought a big blown up poster of my tweet that I was banned for next to Louis Farrakhan's tweet calling, Jews termites, saying that I'm not an anti-Semite, I'm anti-termite, to show the comparison and to show this egregious double standard that exists.
And something that was crazy is that you had your signs up, and then someone from Twitter, I don't know if they work but they came from Twitter's office, grabbed them, took the signs, was slamming the door, but then they gave you your signs back. Once cameras started showing up, once people were watching them, they were trying to act like they weren't
censoring me. Right.
Yeah. So is that what you observed?
Yeah, it was kind of funny because then Twitter, of course, they censor me in real life at their Twitter headquarters. So here I am, a conservative Jew, handcuffed to Twitter, outside, right, being banned from going inside Twitter. And then when I'm trying to express myself and use my free speech outside of Twitter with my signs and show my tweets, the Twitter security and the Twitter employees were literally taking down my signs and ripping them and trying to bring them inside so that I guess they could censor me in real life too. So it was very mimetic and it was wild. And they were so aggressive too. They were so violent, and they actually slammed the door. One of the Twitter employees slammed the door when one of the guys who helped me organize this operation was putting up the sign. And as a result, they amputated his pinky finger. So his pinky is now 75% amputated, and he had to go to the emergency room and he had to get it sewn back on, and they don't even know if he's going to be able to keep his finger. They still have to wait, and he has to go see a hand specialist. But we're always talking about the political violence.
They chopped his finger. Twitter
chopped his finger
in the door.
And they were saying, stop, you're going to hurt someone. Stop, you're going to hurt someone. But Twitter kept pushing, and we have it on video. They were so crazy about signs going up, right? So not only are they crazy about, banning conservatives on the internet, but they want to ban you and censor you in real life as well. And there's nothing.
If this is injury, is that a potential lawsuit against Twitter? Like a different lawsuit? If they're, chopping off someone's finger?
I would think so, but it just also goes to show you that Twitter also has this very violent workplace environment as well. There is evidence, and that's also archived in the paste bin. I brought all of these archived tweets with me that show tweets that people, a lot of whom are verified liberals, have posted, which include assassination threats against President Trump, calling for the death of white people. And there was one tweet, and it showed that it was a pro-Antifa tweet, right? And then the person's profile said that they worked for Twitter. So Twitter actually has members of Antifa working for them.
Wow. So what would you say if Twitter wanted to hire you?
If Twitter wanted to hire me? Well, the only way I would ever agree to work for Twitter is if they, rejected all of the Saudi influence and all of the Saudi money, because I think that the Saudi money and the Saudi investors are having a direct influence on the content and the so-called terms of service and why people are being banned. Because when you ban someone for criticizing Islam, all you're doing is enforcing blasphemy laws. That's Sharia law. You're enforcing a blasphemy law, because in Islam you're not allowed to you're not allowed to criticize Islam, Prophet Muhammad. So that would be the first thing. And then the second thing is, if Twitter were to hire me, well, they would have to, put me in a position where I could advise them on how to improve their relations with conservatives, because there are some conservatives who have tried to reach out to Twitter. They have tried to reach out and they've tried to ask for a forum or some type of meeting or some type of summit where Jack Dorsey would meet with a lot of these conservatives who have been banned to discuss with them ways that Twitter can be more inclusive for conservatives. But Jack Dorsey isn't open to that. And it goes back to one of the questions you asked me about some of the things the haters were saying. I saw that, this is not an effective tactic to be used. Laura Loomer shouldn't handcuff herself. She should be trying to get Jack Dorsey to talk to her. Well, clearly Jack Dorsey isn't really interested in hearing from us, because there are a lot of conservatives who have reached out and tried to communicate, and he and his staff are not really interested in communicating with conservatives.
If you could talk to him right now, if he was listening to you, what would you say to him?
Well, I would tell Jack Dorsey to stop the bias. And hashtag Stop the Bias is the name of this campaign to raise awareness about big tech, social media censorship of conservatives. And I would tell Jack Dorsey that, it's not right for you to have this platform, which you declare to be an open public square, a digital public square, which you yourself have said under oath to Congress is open to all people, right? And that you don't discriminate and that you don't censor people based off political ideology. It's unfair for you to then use this power you have to silence people, censor them, and completely deplatform them and shut them out from the digital public square. Because just look at how influential Twitter and Facebook are in our modern day communications and the way that we receive news and communicate with each other. Right. Every single day, CNN, MSNBC, they're writing stories about what Trump tweeted, right? Twitter has become an essential part of the way that we communicate. And when you ban, half of the population of this country simply because of the way that they view, politics or the individuals who they voted for, while you allow for hateful individuals who are members of terrorist organizations, people who call for the death of Americans and advocate for jihad and Sharia to have a platform, well, clearly there's a bias. And so I would ask Jack Dorsey to stop the bias. That's all. Yeah. I just want him to stop the bias.
Right. I was thinking that I think anyone should be able to say their political views on Twitter. Yeah. I think that's freedom of speech. It's our First Amendment right. I do think it's a public square, not a publisher. But if someone were to be banned or if something were to be taken down, I think it would have to be death threats or stalking, like serious things like that. And I'm just wondering, do you think everything should go on Twitter, or do you think there are some things that should be maybe taken out?
Look, I think that everybody has a right to free speech, but the things that should not be allowed on social media are obviously death threats, calls for assassination of President Trump or any president or any elected official of that matter, doxing. I don't think that should be allowed on social media, right? But we see that on social media. We see people now getting banned for posting facts, for posting accurate information, for commentary, right? Conservative commentary, or even biological facts like there's only 2 genders. People are now getting banned for that. But then we see actual hateful speech and death threats and calls for violence and calls for genocide that go unpunished on Twitter.
Right. And I wanted to ask you too, going back to what you were saying about the method, some people on Twitter have criticized maybe the fact that you're protesting because they think it's kind of like a social justice warrior thing to do, like why do we have to protest in this manner, sort of things like that. So I want to give you a chance to respond to that criticism. What would you say to those people?
Well, I don't know why conservatives would be against protesting. We have a constitutional right to protest. We have a right to peacefully assemble, and that's what I did. I peacefully assembled. I handcuffed myself to the door. I didn't block the door. People could come in and they could leave. There wasn't a fire hazard. I wasn't violent, right? And the left loves protesting, right? And if you've ever read Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals, right, there's a rule number 4, to make your enemy play by their own rule book, right? And that's how we're going to win. That's how we're going to win in this era where, the left has made it their goal to launch nonstop acts of political warfare against conservatives. They don't stop. They don't have any shame. You see representatives like Maxine Waters calling for Democrats to harass Trump supporters in public, right? You see individuals like Keith Ellison endorsing Antifa, which is a designated terrorist organization. You see people like Hillary Clinton, who ran for president, saying that you can't be civil with people who want to destroy you, and calling for people to not be civilized in America.
But that doesn't. Well, do you think that means that we should be uncivil?
I think that we have to fight fire with fire. And I think that if Andrew Breitbart were alive today, I think that he would agree with me. And I truly believe that that it works. I really do believe that when you give the left a taste of their own medicine, in a nonviolent way, of course,
I think
works.
that's key too, because I agree we need to be able to protest. Why does the left protest issues they care about? Why can't we protest issues we care about in a nonviolent way?
And that's exactly what I did, and it was highly effective. I mean, imagine this. I am banned permanently on Twitter, and my protest at Twitter, while handcuffed to the door of their headquarter office in New York, was the #1 trending topic on Twitter in the United States, and I believe it was the #2 trend worldwide.
That's crazy.
And so now millions of people all around the world will know about social media bias, and they'll learn about this double standard, and they'll be able to look at my website, and they'll be able to learn more about this. And it was not violent. I didn't hurt anybody. Nobody was injured.
Well, the person who was
injured by Twitter. So of course, more left-wing violence. But nobody was threatened, like you often see occur during these left-wing protests, where they damage property, they set things on fire, they attack people, they mace people. So I think that it's really time for conservatives to take the gloves off and to start fighting back, because we see how nasty the Democrats play. We see how dirty they are, how they collude with these social media companies, right? That's not even a secret. We see how low they are willing to go, right? They call us fake news simply because we're conservative, but meanwhile, they're championing people like Michael Avenatti, who's representing women who are now admitting that they filed false rape accusations against Brett Kavanaugh. I mean, they don't care about morals, they don't care about ethics, but they want to complain about me because I wore a Jewish star and handcuffed myself to Twitter?
Well, I want to ask you about the Jewish star because, again, I want to give you a chance to respond, because I have seen some people on Twitter criticizing the fact that you wore the Jewish star. Some of them claim that it might be little survivors or people who were actually part of the Holocaust, and you're Jewish, so I do want to hear your thoughts on why you wore the star and whether you defend wearing the star.
I defend wearing the star, and the reason I defend wearing the star is because I think that it was necessary to highlight the seriousness and the hypotheticals of what could happen if we continue to allow for monopolies like these big tech social media companies, and we allow for the violence left in America, and these organizations that are clearly censoring and shadow banning and suppressing conservative voices. What could happen when you have?
What do you think could happen?
Well, I think that look at the facts right now. We are living in a time where we're seeing increased waves of anti-Semitism that has not been seen since the time of the Second World War, right? There was a poll that came out, and I think it was even through CNN. I hate to cite CNN, but it showed that over a third of high school students in Europe are learning nothing about the Holocaust. And the reason why they're not learning anything about the Holocaust is because Europe is being overrun with Islamic immigrants, and they don't believe in the Holocaust. Because according to a lot of, Islamic countries, their educational system, they don't teach about the Holocaust. They don't teach about it. When you have social media companies kicking off a Jewish journalist, right, for exposing Jew hatred, exposing Sharia, exposing things that could lead to atrocities that we have seen in the past in our history. But then you allow for Louis Farrakhan to channel his inner Hitler and say, quote, Hitler was a great man. I'm not anti-Semite, I'm anti-termite. Well, what do you do when you have a termite infestation? You call for the exterminator. So these people, these social media companies are essentially giving a dog whistle to the extermination of Jews. And that's why I felt it was necessary, while highlighting this, highlighting the egregious double standard over my tweet that got me banned as a Jewish woman, calling out Jew hatred, and Louis Farrakhan's tweet as a member of the Nation of Islam, somebody who himself, has suggested that, the Holocaust wasn't real, somebody himself who has, called Jews termites, basically called Jews satanic. And it's very dangerous, because when you have this echo chamber, or when you silence voices and you try to normalize this idea of exterminating Jews, well, we can all be reminded of what happened when that became normalized in the 1930s and the 1940s. It was the Holocaust. Yeah. And I'm not trying to say that, me losing my Twitter verification or me being banned from Twitter is the equivalent of the Holocaust. It was a symbol to remind people of what happens when you silence political opposition and give a dog whistle to violent, hateful rhetoric, whether it be against the Jews, against white people, against President Trump.
Gotcha. I also want to ask you, because I know you're not on Twitter, not on Facebook, how can people find you, and what is your plan moving forward? How do you plan to be in the news, be a journalist, do what you're trying to do, get this message out? I mean, your protest clearly got the message out there. Like you said, it was so seen worldwide. But how can you continue to get your message out?
Right. So people can follow me on my website at lauraloomer.us. And that's probably the best place for people to follow my content and receive my updates. I send weekly email updates as well. And that's where I'm really trying to get people to follow me now, is on my website. So again, that's lauraloomer.us. And that's where people can also learn more about my videos. They can learn about my investigations. They can receive updates about projects that I'm working on. You can support my work on my website as well, and on my PayPal. It's very unfortunate. I have to have people go to my website now, which is fine, but my website is nowhere near, my website subscriber list is nowhere near what I had on Twitter. It's nowhere near what I had on Facebook. And so my ability to communicate as a journalist has been, significantly reduced. It's been significantly damaged by this, act of deplatforming by these big tech social media companies that clearly colluded, since they decided to ban me at the same time. And so I don't really think there's a comparison between, a few thousand subscribers here and then 265,000 on Twitter, right?
Sure.
Yeah. So one of the worst parts about losing my Twitter account isn't just about me personally, right, losing my platform, but it's about the 265,000 plus people who were following me. And the relationships and the friendships and the communications that I had with those individuals. And I used my platform as a way to provide a voice to the voiceless. And now I'm not able to do that, because I'm not able to have those connections anymore, since my platform has been deleted. I had no warning, so I couldn't tell everybody to just, go subscribe to my website, or, I'm going to be banned from Twitter tomorrow, so make sure you follow me here. It just happens like that. So now 265,000 people are gone, and who knows if they're going to be able to find me on my website? Who knows if they're going to be able to find me elsewhere? But I think that it's really sad that people like Jack Dorsey and Mark Zuckerberg, or whoever is going to be the next person to design some big social media app, has the power to just destroy friendships and professional relationships, and just take away something that people have spent a lot of time and resources building up. And I don't think that the argument that, it's their company, they can do what they want, really stands, because I think that they need to address right? If they're going to use that argument, then they need to address why people like myself have been kicked off and other conservatives for voicing our opinions, but then Louis Farrakhan is allowed to stay on Twitter while calling Jews termites, which is essentially a dog whistle to the extermination of Jews. He needs to give an explanation, and hopefully my protest in which I printed up these big tweets and the papers that I brought with me that showed thousands of examples of verified leftist users pushing hateful conduct and death threats and assassination threats and calls for genocide. Hopefully that will, urge Jack Dorsey to release a statement. But
And another thing too, even just kind of side note, like you were saying with all your relationships that you've cultivated on these platforms, it's like a lot of people use social media to communicate with friends or communicate with family. Or what about like relationships, because it's kind of a social network, right? So
yeah, it is a social network.
You can't even have that.
Yeah. I don't think that these people like Jack Dorsey and Mark Zuckerberg think about the psychological aspect of just deleting somebody's platform, because you're essentially killing them off from their relationships, their social network. And what if you had a family member and they had, they lived very far away, the other side of the world.
Yeah, like I have family in India, and like a lot of the time we're, on social media or something, and I can see what they're doing, and they can see what I'm doing. And so now. Well,
so what happens if you get banned then? Are you not allowed to talk to your family? And it doesn't cost any money also to use these social media platforms as long as you have an internet connection. Right? But international phone calls do cost money. So now what you're doing also is you're disenfranchising groups of people as well. So when you ban someone, they may not be able to communicate with their family overseas, depending on if they're cut off from the internet, right? Because the internet and these platforms have allowed people to, bypass spending a lot of money on phone bills or foreign phone calls or, plane tickets overseas, because there's FaceTime, there's the Facebook Messenger, there's Periscope, there's all types of things. So I think that they need to also consider that when they decide to deplatform people, because it's also very, it's upsetting on a personal level, not just because you lose your work, but also all the friendships and relationships that you built with people on the platform.
Right, and I'm sure you had existing relationships and you've cultivated new relationships, but also you were saying it happens like that. And what were you thinking when Twitter gave you warnings, I guess? Because some people might be watching this and be thinking, oh, well, but weren't you warned? And they might make that argument.
They don't really give you warnings. What they do is they'll suspend your account or they'll lock your account for a few hours. But even then, I never really know what to take out of that, because they just suspend your account or lock your account for the most ridiculous things, even if you post facts. So every time I post a tweet, I guess I would always take a deep breath and think, oh, is this going to be the one? Is this going to be the one? Because anything, even factual information, can get you banned. When I posted a video of Rashida Tlaib, who's now one of the other newly elected Muslim congresswomen, physically assaulting me on camera, I got banned from Facebook for 30 days for hate speech, because they said I was bullying somebody when I was just simply reporting on the fact that she assaulted me, and I filed a police report.
Wow. So did Twitter ever tell you, hey, you're on warning, you're on for this, you can't post this, or any explanation of why you might have been before suspended or locked before you were permanently banned for life?
They just simply sent that tweet and they said it's a violation of our terms of service for hateful conduct. So.
And then banned for life.
Banned for life.
Okay. Wow. Alrighty. Well, guys, this is Laura Loomer again. Please give her a big thank you for talking to us. Again, I am so glad that we got to do this interview, because I have seen so many people come out in support for you on Twitter, and I support your freedom of speech, and I've been tweeting about that a lot. But there are a lot of people who are criticizing you, and I don't think it's fair that you can't respond to them. So I'm going to post this video. Hopefully people can share it and see it so they can see your side of the story. And again, this is Laura Loomer, and I'm Danielle D'Souza Gill. You can follow both of us on Instagram at Loomered and at Danielle D'Souza Gill. So,
and I just wanted to say thank you as well for showing up yesterday to the protest and broadcasting it as well. And yeah, you and your dad both have been great supporters, and I'm really thankful that you're allowing me this opportunity to use my voice. So thank you.
Oh, of course. I think people need to see what's going on, and people should have the right to the First Amendment. And so please share this video, and thank Laura Loomer for joining with us. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you.